Although seachem is not an official sponsor of this channel, I do hope that you'll go out and try some of their amazing products today. Those of you who follow me here on The Art of Water will probably notice some differences in the tank that I call the Cliffs. Now, what I did basically was do some additions to this tank that were much needed upgrades because the tank was getting a little old and dated, and also there were some problems between the two epistogrammas that were in this tank. The maturity of them did not allow for them to be in the tank together any longer, so I had to split them up. As you can see, the redneck pisto, who I scared off just now, unfortunately, the redneck pisto is coming back out, but he got scared there for a second, and I apologize. I shouldn't have put my fingers up so quickly. Pistos are very friendly, but they can be a bit of a shy fish or intimidated fish if you approach them a little bit too fast. But as you can see, the redneck apisto that is in here is by himself. The hung sloy that was in here with him was removed and put in his own tank. As you remember, a couple of videos ago I did put together and start scaping a 15-gallon peninsula made by Waterbox, and I did complete that scape, and we'll see that in a video here in the next coming weeks. We will see the rest of that video come together, and the introduction of the hung sloy epistogramma to that tank. Now, the other things that you're going to notice, I'm going to get something to point with so that I don't scare that particular fish in here. So give me just a second here to point out some things that about this tank that I want you to see those things without having to, put my fingers up to the tank here. Now, as you can see, in this area here, there are plants here, 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 and here, and that is cardinal plants that I stuffed down in these new rocks that were also placed in here. The cliffs used to be a very, if you look at my old videos, it used to be a very barren area here with just some repens stuffed in here and there in the front. It was never very full. I didn't like that. What I like about this is that there is a fullness that works its way down from the top rocks in the back here, which is where the name the Cliffs came from for this particular tank, and then they get lower and lower and lower and sort of give you that three-dimensional look that I wanted to go after with this. Now, also you'll notice the introduction of this new piece of wood in the center. Now, I found this piece of wood in a shop that I thought would be just perfect for a tank that had virtually no wood in it at all, and I did a little bit of measuring of the tank, and then I went back and got this, and it fit just absolutely perfectly in the center of the tank area right here. Now, what I did with the piece of wood is I did add some petite Anubias nana in here, or nana being Anubias plant. I didn't put the full size in here. I put some here on this rock, and I also put two pieces on the wood here, and the pieces on the wood are tucked into these little areas on both sides of these little flares that come off the wood here. Also, another addition to this was some Java fern in a couple of areas here. This petite nana was here, and the petite nana in the back was always here as well. That's why I continued on with the petite nana theme, is because I wanted it to look uniform. Also, there was, before they pulled all of the merino balls of moss, I did take a few and break them up and stuff them in between the rocks down in this area here, just to give it that nice clean green look, which I thought was a great addition to the tank as well. So those are the changes basically that took place over the last couple of weeks of this tank. Now, I was going to do more with the merino balls as far as pushing them into areas down in the front here, but Fish and Wildlife, in my area at least, had confiscated all of those from the stores around where I live, so it was almost impossible to find them. The plan for the future would be to order some online, because this confiscation took place only in 7 states in the country, and you can still get them online. So if you're looking for merino balls, moss balls, then I would suggest buying them through Amazon or someplace like that, because they do have them still, and you can get them. In fact, I have some on order now, and when they get here, I will be placing them into these little cracks and crevices along the front here to make it look more full and to add that different texture of green, or the different colors of green, variations on the color green in here, just to offer up some contrast to the tank. So that's pretty much it as far as what I've done to this tank to really change it, and I like the way it looks. I really do. It's given it a very different look from what it was before. It still has that cliff look with, you know, maybe a tree halfway down the cliffs that has been broken off, and just kind of a nice look that I think gives it a three-dimensional view as you're looking at it. If you can see that through your camera, I hope you can pick up on that. And when you do that, I think it really offers up the tank to have just, you know, some subtleties to it that it didn't have before. And the other thing that was added to this is I do have some mystery snails up in here, which you cannot see on the camera. Let me see if I can pan up that way and see if we can find those mystery snails up there at the top. Yeah, you can see right over here the mystery snail right in this area here. There are 2 or 3 of those in this tank, so I just thought that was a great addition to this particular tank, because they do keep the glass clean. I'm not buying nearite snails as much anymore, because as I have talked about in other videos, the nearite snail is a little bit more difficult to keep, because they like that brackish water more than they do fresh water. So there can be some problems with those snails over a long period of time. Now, I don't want to say that it can't be done, because the bottom line is I have received a ton of comments from people that have been keeping nearite snails for a while. I keep very pristine tanks. Water parameters are extremely important to me as far as the health of my tank and the fish that go in them, and I still have not been able to keep nearite snails. And it doesn't matter which tank, which kind of rock, My pHs, regardless of the rock in my tanks, always run right around 6.2 to 6.8, roughly somewhere in there. And still, the water being as soft as it is, my nearite snails do not survive much longer than 6 months to a year, and then they expire. So it's been a very frustrating situation with those. The mystery snails are not as colorful to me, and it's unfortunate that the nearites, I can't seem to keep them. If anyone has any ideas on the nearites that can offer up some information that I don't have, because as I said, I've read about this. I've talked to people who are in the business, and they have told me that the nearite snail is just not designed long term to live in freshwater environments in a healthy way. They just don't make it. Now, one of the other reasons that I may have problems with nearites, and I will add this to it because I don't want to sound like I'm an authority on nearite snails. I certainly do not have any scientific background in this area. This is only my experience and the experience of reading about these snails as to why they don't live very long in fresh water. And I'm not the only one that has had that problem, but like I said, I have received a lot of mail lately indicating that some people have had these snails for 3 and 4 years, which is fantastic if you can do it. And I just don't know what they're doing differently than I am. The only thing I can think of, as I started to say here, was I do not have an abundance of algae in my tanks. So it could be that there's just not enough food for them, and possibly they're starving to death because of that. Now, I have always tried to subsidize my tanks for these guys here, the autosynclus, and also for the Siamese algae eaters that you see right here, and the snails, and the apistogramma, which I don't see the apisto anywhere in here right now. Usually he's out and about, but the lights just came on, and sometimes he's not available for a while. But I always have used some wafers, algae wafers with protein in them, to try to keep the stock of cleaner fish and algae eaters in my tank in good shape, and that has always been something that has worked really well for me. And the nearite snails, though, have just never benefited. I don't know why. They're a very slow-moving snail compared to the mystery snail. The mystery snail can move across the tank very quickly. For those of you who are familiar with mystery snails, they are a snail that can move extremely fast across the tank and cover a large area. So therefore, you only need them for a tank like this, which is just a 20-gallon cube. You only need a couple of mystery snails really to cover this whole area, because they are on the move, like I said, which makes me wonder how much they're really eating. They have a little larger footprint than a nearite as well, so maybe the speed in which the snail moves across the tank walls or across the hardscape and plants may have something to do with the job that they do, because I have been told that the mystery snail doesn't do as good a job at keeping algae down. Now, I don't have an algae issue, don't get me wrong. These are more decorative for me than they are useful tools, because the mystery snail to me is not the most lovely thing you can put in your tank. Now, they do come in some interesting colors. You can find some really pretty aqua blues, some really interesting patterned browns with black circular patterns on there. And you know, like I say, several different colors, but they're not like the neorites where you just get this vast palette of colors that are really, really beautiful. And it's just too bad. I'm again, if somebody can tell me what I might be doing wrong and not keeping my neorites alive, I'd like to know that, because I don't lose fish. You would think that, you know, if your neorites are dying because of a problem or something that you're doing incorrectly, that your fish would die as well. And I'm not having that happen. So it is something very specific to the neorite snails. And again, like I said, I have a lot of different tanks, so whatever it is, it's covering every tank that I have. It must be something that I'm doing pretty uniform that is creating the environment for the neorites to not thrive. Anyways, enough about the snails. Getting back to this tank and its future plans, I think I will leave this tank like this for a while. I do like the way it looks. I think it's a little bit more full. Now, something I did want to point out, which is being corrected right now, if you look at the Anubias petite nana on both sides of this tree, when I received, in fact, this guy down here as well, when I received these in the mail, it was during that really bad cold spell where Texas and a lot of parts of the southwest and southeastern United States were really cold. Those got caught up in that time frame of being shipped, and when I got them, they were literally hours away from being frozen. Now, they had packed these in a plastic bag, and they had put some insulated foil like bubble wrap in there as well, but that just didn't even come close to being something that helped those plants in any way, shape, or form. They would have needed some kind of heat pack in there to survive that weather. And what happened to them was that when I put them in here, I tried to adapt them slowly with some water that was dechlorinated, that brought the temperature up really slow so as not to shock the plant, but it didn't work. And as you can see, there is some melt off going off on these two particularly, and this one here did lose a few leaves as well that I cut off. But I've never seen that with Anubias before. If Anubias is melting, it really takes a lot to shock that particular plant. So there is replacements coming to me in the mail, and I will try to salvage as much as I can off the two that are in here, and also add two to the bunch and try to make it look as though they're all part of one particular plant. But we'll see how that's going to work out. Like I said, those are going to be mailed to me, and they're being extremely careful not to send out anything in the mail where bad weather is going to be a problem. Now, we do have some bad weather coming up through the southeast again into the midwestern areas of the country. We're going to be seeing that over the next few days, so I have asked them to hold off on mailing me those replacement plants until the weather is a little bit more conducive to shipping those plants to me, and they have agreed to do that because they don't want to have the same situation either, where, you know, they get these in the mail and then they end up in the same problem when they get to me, that they're in bad shape. So they should look like this over here. This is a very healthy plant, and if you're not familiar with Anubias petite nana, then that is what it should look like, or it should look like those in the far back of the tank that have new growth on them are very bright green and colorful. These are very dull, almost got a brownish tint to them because the leaves, as I said, were basically frostbitten or harmed by the travel that took place in that cold weather. So we'll get those replaced, not a big deal. I'm interested to see how these are going to do, these cardinals plants down in here. I'm not referring to the cardinal fish now, I'm talking about the plants that are down in here. These are typically a mid-level tank plant, and so I'm going to have to be careful to watch how these grow and keep them clipped down, because if you don't, they're going to look out of place in a tank like this. But I have used cardinal plants like this for the front part of a tank, just kind of looking like bushes basically. And I do that by keeping them trimmed, and if you do keep them trimmed, you can keep them that way because the leaves are not very big, they're not very intrusive to the landscape of the tank, and it's just a great plant to do that if you have the time, which I do. If you have the time to spend on keeping them trimmed up. Now, something that needs to take place in this tank as well is I'm going to have to step up probably the amount of dosing that I do with fertilizers. I don't use CO2, so that is one way that there's a possibility I could bring back these Anubias petite nanas here, is by having some CO2 in the tank, but I do not run CO2. I haven't in a couple of years now, simply because I've never found a need. If you look at most of my aquariums, in any video that I send out, you notice that the plant life in my aquariums tends to thrive very nicely with beautiful colors, and I get a lot of comments on the quality of the plants that I have in my tanks. In fact, I'm kind of known for that without using CO2. For those of you who are new here, anyone that has watched my videos over the last couple of years knows that I do not use CO2 in my tanks any longer. I do dose with Excel and Flourish, which are both seachem products. I'm not trying to plug them in particular, even though I have an ad at the beginning of my videos. It's because their products have been so good to me that I want other people to use them and get the same benefits. So I have added that in to my videos on my own. They have not by any way, shape or form endorsed me or sponsored me in any way. I buy all my own products, and anyways, I just want to make that clear. But I do use, like I said, Excel, seachem Excel and seachem Flourish, both to keep my plants in really, really good shape. And as you can see, the color of the plants talks for itself. They have really, really benefited by both of those types of chemicals or types of what am I trying to say? Those types of fertilizers. I couldn't get that word out for some reason there. That really have made all of my tanks just really, really spectacularly healthy with just those two products. So anyways, that's it for today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. And if you have any ideas, like I said, about the Nearite snails, on what I can do to keep those alive, the information that I've been reading on them, it just keeps going back to the same thing, that they're just not really designed to live long lives in freshwater tanks. But again, it's contrary to what a lot of you are telling me as far as how you're keeping nearite snails for up to 5 years. And to me, if you're keeping them up to 5 years, then something is different about what I'm doing compared to what you're doing. So again, if you have information about that and you want to offer that up to me, hey, I am interested in listening to you and interested in trying whatever it is that you might have as far as information goes that can help me to keep neorites again, because they're a beautiful snail, and I enjoyed having them. I still have them in some tanks. They're alive. Some of them are a year or more old, so I can't say that I've had 100% failure with these particular snails, but again, they just don't do well long term for me. And to spend the amount of money that you sometimes need to spend to get a nearite snail that's healthy anyway, you got to be careful to get these. Getting them from big box stores is just a bad idea. They seem to, die like flies when you get them from, a Petco or a PetSmart. That's my experience. Nothing against Petco or PetSmart. They serve their purpose as far as being the, generalized large box pet store in your area. For most of the community who is not into the scaping and all of that, they serve a purpose. But I've noticed that buying anything from these stores, as far as fish or snails or anything alive, in fact, even their betta fish are rarely in good shape when you get them. If you do get a betta fish that is in good shape from a Petco or a PetSmart, then you have a store where somebody who is managing it is making sure that the water changes in their tanks or in the little cups that they tend to keep these things in, which just absolutely infuriates me that these things are kept in cups like that. But anyways, if you want a betta fish, go and rescue one, basically, because that's probably what you're doing, is rescuing them from a Petco or a PetSmart. But if you can find one that's healthy enough to bring home and give it a good home, minimum 5 gallons in my opinion, and treat it just like you would any other tank, with filtration and heat and substrate and a good balance of environment where good beneficial bacteria can grow, and your betta fish will do great. We're getting a little off on here. I hope you like the cliffs now, the way I have redone this tank and the additions that I've put in here, and some of the changes that were made. Again, this will look slightly different the next time you see it, because by then I'll have those real moss balls, and I will be putting them in areas around the little crotch and crevices of this rocky area here to fill it out and to give it that lush sort of landscape look. And also, the next time you see the tank, likely the new Anubias Petite Nana will be here, and these won't look so beat up. And it's just sad because they were such beautiful plants. You could tell that the seller had done a good job of raising these plants up, and it was just a bad time during the shipping, and they basically were very good at offering up replacements without trying to get me to nurse these back to life. I'm sure over time they would look fine, but I like for my tanks to look the way they're supposed to look when they're supposed to look that way. I didn't pay almost $16 per plant for them to arrive in the condition that they did. So anyways, again, leave comments down below there, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also share with your friends. I appreciate the time you spent with me today to take a look at this old friend tank of mine. And by the way, this rubber lip that has been scooting across the tank down in here and across the front here, he's a very small rubber lip and he will not be in here. There is a bristle nose albino pleco that is back in here who will become the permanent residence in this tank until he gets too big for it. But this rubber nose that's over here in this area on the glass, which I think he's just slightly out of frame here, will go to another home. I'm just trying to figure out where that's going to be at this point here. He may join his old friend, the hung sloy, which we did a species profile on that particular fish just a few days ago. And anyways, I've spent almost 30 minutes on a video that I did not intend to spend this much time on. So anyways, thank you for joining me today, and that is really all. Until the next one, we will see you then.